this so-called whistleblower.
Everything.
Yeah. They have not actually caught this so-called
fugitive
whistleblower
on the run.
that James Comer. So he is a fugitive from the law. So they have embraced these House Republicans, a fugitive on the law.
This morning, we're also learning more about the arrest of that FBI informant tied to the Hunter Biden case. Prosecutors now revealing that informant was in contact with Russian intelligence officials. And
he may be the Republicans' great hope, maybe a Chinese spy. So he's on the run. He's a fugitive from the law. And the fine people in the Southern District of New York think that Comer's like ace in his pocket that he's going to pull out and show the libs. He's going to own the libs with a suspected Chinese spy
Gal
who's
Luft.
a fugitive from the law. And there you have, Willie Geist, your 2023 House Republican caucus.
If you had to guess, if I was to ask you, is the DOJ destroying lives to cover up for Joe Biden, what would be your guess? Because according to one of the Democrats' favorite congresspeople, that's a 50-50 question. And that's pretty damn scary, if you ask me. And I'm sure you guys have seen the left is taking a pretty good victory lap over a guy that they've never even heard of being arrested for things that they can't even explain. They don't even understand. And it reminds me of the whole Gal Luft defense. If you guys don't remember, Gal Luft was another Biden whistleblower, also arrested by Biden's DOJ. And the left hilariously claimed at that time that he was no longer credible because he's now an alleged criminal. And my thoughts were, if that's the case, that just makes it so much more likely that he actually witnessed the crimes that he claimed that he witnessed. But anyway, here we are. Here we are again playing the same game with the same corrupt people. And the frightening thing, man, is the average leftist just continues to applaud and literally apologize for corruption. It's almost like corruption gets them off, like they're living vicariously through these corrupt politicians. Like they're so excited by it, it just blows my mind. But Matt Gaetz, he's got some stones, man. He did something that very few Republicans would actually do, ever have done or will ever do. He went on CNN to talk about impeachment, to talk about Alexis Smirnoff, and to talk about why he believes Biden's impeachment doesn't actually need Smirnoff.
Is that true?
I personally debriefed the whistleblower who initially identified this 1023 alleging a bribe with the Biden family. And that whistleblower told us at the time that he did not know whether or not that bribe had actually been consummated, but merely the existence of a 1023 that the FBI wasn't providing to Congress warranted further review. Now, when we initially asked for this 1023, we were told by the Department of Justice, it's got all these national security implications. We have to protect this confidential human source. So now what we have to decipher is which arm of the Department of Justice was telling us the truth. Because in these indictments that you see from Weiss, there are all these allegations that Smirnoff could not have possibly observed these instances of bribery because he wasn't in the countries stated. But when we were debriefing the U.S. attorney from Pittsburgh, we got a very different version of events. Scott Brady told us that they could verify those travel records. So we got to figure out which part of the DOJ was telling the truth and which wasn't.
What Ken Buck is saying was that people in Congress were warned that this confidential source, what he was providing could not be verified. Is that part something that you were ever told, that what he had to say? And so given that, should that not have produced some more caution on the part of your colleagues, James Comer, Jim Jordan, as they talked about the value of the information that this source had provided?
I think what they talked about was the extent to which DOJ was entangled with this particular source, the number of cases he'd been involved in, the number of successful prosecutions based off that information.
They called this, I want to play for you what they said, but they called it basically a linchpin of the investigation. Listen.
The most corroborating evidence we have is that 1023 form from this highly credible, confidential human source.
Every day, this bribery scandal becomes more credible.
We already know the president took bribes from Burisma. I also want to add, betraying your country is treason.
This, ladies and gentlemen, is gold. This is direct evidence of naked corruption and bribery.
The evidence is overwhelming, Maria. The nails in the coffin.
Was that irresponsible?
A few of those characterizations might have been a little oversauced, but I do think that the bribery can also go to a family member, right? The reason I think it's still bribery, though, Abby, is because if you want to bribe a 75-year-old man, you pay their kids.
But here's the thing. You just acknowledged there's actually no evidence of bribery when it comes to what this confidential source had.
I did not acknowledge that.
You acknowledged that there's no proof. There's reports of bribery, but there's actually no proof of bribery actually being consummated.
I think that when you pay someone's family member in order to influence their decision, that is a bribe. Now, I recognize that that's probably not a view of bribery that's going to lead to an impeachment in the House. But yeah, how do you think you bribe old people? You pay their kids and their family members.
I mean, you can, in your mind, think about it however you want, but from a constitutional and even from a legal perspective, that's
well, I don't think so. I think you should read the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act
I just want to ask you, though.
You know that in the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, payment to a family member can constitute a bribe.
Here's what.
Yeah, I mean, that is absolutely true. And I've always been curious why they haven't taken that approach in public concerning Joe Biden, because that absolutely is true. That is a bribe. Enriching a person's entire family based on what that person can do for you is without a doubt a bribe, not just legally, but to any objective outside observer. And the thing that's amazing to me, man, is that these propagandists on TV and the viewers held captive by them, they can't just look at themselves honestly and recognize that if you just replace the name Biden with Trump or replace the big letter D with a big letter R, then they see all of these things entirely differently. And it's just so amazing that so many people can be so intellectually closed off. And I can hear the libs in the chat right now talking about Jared Kushner. But the funny thing is, they can rattle off the name Kushner or rattle off the name Hunter, but they can't actually explain what either guy supposedly did.
In the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, payment to a family member can constitute a bribe.
Here's what you said, Congressman. This was in October at a private fundraiser. You said, "I don't believe that we are endeavoring upon a legitimate impeachment of Joe Biden. They're trying to engage in a forever war of impeachment. And like so many of our forever wars, it will drag on forever and end in a bloody draw." Honestly, it seems like maybe you were right the first time.
When you've heard me speak about issues important to me, I haven't led with impeachment. I talk about the budget and single subject spending bills and term limits and things like that.
Your colleagues, given that, according to Jim Jordan, this was the most corroborating piece of evidence that they had, should they drop this impeachment at this point?
I disagree with Jordan that this is what's most corroborating. I think what's most corroborating are the payments to Hunter Biden and Frank Biden and James Biden. I was deposing James Biden, and the way that they took money from the Chinese government would make your skin crawl. Now, that's admittedly James Biden, not Joe Biden, but I do believe when these foreign governments are loading up the entire Biden family apparatus with cash, they're not doing so to extract some sort of skill or service from these ne'er-do-well Bidens. They're doing it to influence Joe Biden.
Everything that you've described is an inference. It's basically saying, well, it must be, but there's actually you haven't actually given any proof of what you're alleging.
Okay, but so Abby, why do you think Burisma was paying Hunter Biden? You think they were paying him to figure out where to go buy crack in L.A.?
In the absence
they were paying him because he had access to Joe.
In the absence of actual proof.
But that
just
is
as
true.
You said earlier, is this impeachment inquiry even going anywhere if you cannot provide enough evidence? Jonathan Turley, a conservative lawyer, he was brought before the committee to testify about this. He said there's not enough evidence to support articles of impeachment against Joe Biden.
Yeah, when Jonathan Turley said that, we should have asked Jamal Bowman to pull a fire alarm. It was a devastating moment for House Republicans. But I think the impeachment inquiry will have to rely on deciphering whether or not it was Weiss or Brady accurately assessing the travel of Smirnoff.
Do you think that's what the impeachment inquiry ought to be about? Or shouldn't it be about whether or not you actually have proof of bribery?
Well, let's assume that Brady's right, that Smirnoff indeed was in these places making these observations. And I'm not saying he is. I'm saying it's a contradiction. In that event, you could literally have a situation where Smirnoff is being arrested to facilitate the cover-up. Now, again, I think that requires us reviewing the travel records and getting more transparency out of the Department of Justice, more than they've been willing to give us to date.
Can you guys imagine that? I mean, not saying it's true, not saying it's happening, but can you imagine that? I mean, what do we think the odds are that the same special prosecutor who tried to sneak a backdoor blanket immunity deal for Hunter Biden past a federal judge, all while making gun crimes disappear, gun crimes that have imprisoned millions of people already, is also now arresting people who are actually witnesses for making false statements? I hope that's not the case, because it's just so incredibly freaking dirty and disgusting. But if that is the case, there's zero chance that that would surprise anyone who's actually paying attention. But that's just my take, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you haven't already, be a part of our growth. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel. I'll see you in the next one.